Wow, good morning, good evening, good afternoon, good day to you all. It's about marriage today. You know, most people, as we grow up, our life is panned out. You go to preschool or what others call creche, you go to primary school, you go to high school, you go to university. After that, you go to work. Then what? Do you get married? Do you not get married? Do you get children? Do you not get children? How do you go ahead with your life? This is the discussion of the day. So, we are discussing a decision that many of us are confronted with at a certain point in time. And the reasons and the factors that we consider in making this decision. There are different pressures that we go through that affect how you make this decision. You've got family, you've got religion, you've got your peers. Everyone is getting married, or everyone is not getting married, or you are married, but everyone else seems to be enjoying their life and you are left alone. We've got careers. People, do I grow professionally? Do I need to focus on my studies? How do I go about this? Financial stability. Is it better financially for me to have a partner? Is it better financially for me to be alone? This is all what we are discussing today. And what actually determines this decision? We are living in the era of online dating. We have got technology, fancy weddings, there's blessers, there's same-sex marriages and partnerships, there's polygamy, there's abuse, even in relationships before you get into marriages. So we are joined today with a powerful panel of young people, young Africans. We've got Dorcas, who's with us in Cape Town, South Africa. We have Herbert joining us from Italy. We have got Vincent, the minister, joining us all the way from Turkey. We have got Sam joining us from South Africa, Cape Town. And we've got Tate and Calvin joining us from Hazyview in South Africa. Wow, great to have you all, guys. It's going to be, fireworks today, but we'll start with you, Tate and Calvin. You guys, when you got married, what were the factors you had to consider? How did you make up this decision? How did you get to that point of saying this is where we want to go?
Okay, well, for me, the most important thing that I took into consideration was vision. Whether this guy had a vision. We
go
had
ahead.
He had his own vision. I had my own vision. But the fact that he was a man with potential. You understand? Whether he was employed or he wasn't at that time. But the fact that when I asked him, okay, what are your future plans? He had to tell me, okay, Tatenda, this is what I see, where I see ourselves in 5 years. This is where we see ourselves in 10 years to come. So the fact that he was a man with a vision, and secondly, the fact that he was a God-fearing man, for me, it was a very important decision. A very important factor that he's a man who loves God, he's a Christian. The fact that we we shared the same religion. Yeah.
Yeah. I hear the potential coming up there to say he had potential. There was light in the future.
Yes, definitely light in the future.
But I need to ask
Okay.
Go ahead a bit.
Like, for example, how long have you been married? Have this potential materialized yet? Or
Okay. Let me take you back a bit. We started dating 2009. I was at the University of Wits. He had just come to South Africa, and he had just completed his master's in civil engineering. Civil engineering, was not working then, and we dated and got married in 2012. So we basically dated for about 4 years. Yeah. So until now, we've been together.
And when you, Calvin, what factors were you considering?
Yeah, like what you have mentioned, that there are so many reasons, because when you're choosing a partner, especially a life partner, it's not something that you should rush, because it's someone whom you can spend 34 years or the rest of your life with. So I had to consider all the reason, like religiously, to say that do we click? So for me, like what you said, that I'm a God-fearing man. Yes, we clicked in terms of the same God that we worship. Then the issue of vision is very important, because long back, women were so much suppressed. But for now, you find that they have become a career woman. Like what she said, she's a lawyer by profession. I'm a civil engineer. Even though we're married, she wants to pursue her destiny. I want to pursue my destiny. So the way my approach was that I've got a vision. She's got a vision, but our vision somewhere they have to click, so that I don't disturb her in a line of trying to attain a destiny, and myself also she does not disturb me. So in a way, what made us to click was the fact that we joined our vision to become one. Me not affecting her in terms of her profession, but actually supporting her in terms of the things which she wants, and herself supporting myself in my career as well. So I think basically that's
Wow,
what has made us to be where we are.
that is great, and maybe let's just pump the brakes a bit, guys. We've got a number of people on the panel who are not married yet. Are these factors still the same? Because these guys are talking about 2009. This is 2020. We are in the age of the pandemic. Post-pandemic. Are these still the same factors that we are looking at? Yeah, Herbert.
Okay. Well, yeah. Well, first of all, I think, can you guys adopt me? I mean, your father is the engineer, you've got the mother who is the lawyer. I mean, for sure, you are living the best life. I mean, this is really wonderful. I mean, I would, wow. Yes, we have this thing called vision, but I think at the same time, I think there's a challenge to this, because I don't know, then maybe they were too much slay queens, I don't know, but now they are there, they are people that are really courted in this kind of scenario, that when they actually start talking about whatever they want to do, you think, yes, this is the right person that they want to. And us also, guys, we can actually try to pretend. I mean, back then, there was always an example that I used to say that back then in Zoom, in the ghetto, a guy would come and say, can I have your clothes? I want to see my girlfriend, and then they look all fancy and everything, but entirely the guy does not have anything. And the unfortunate part, especially for the migrants or expats, it's a problem. It's a problem because you don't know really the background of the person. It's just a matter of whatever that they tell you at that particular time, not really that you grew up together in the same community, so you have an idea of what the person is. So at this particular time, I think it's actually a little bit complicated when you're actually an expert.
Yeah,
that's
and yeah, and then Paul on Facebook says it's marriage 6.0. We need a lot of updates. Sam, are these two the same factors you are considering? Yeah, Sam, you can come in.
Yeah, I think for myself, I also just wanted to say that there's nothing wrong with slay queens. Perhaps because I probably perceive marriage through a feminist lens, as well as through an Afrocentric lens, and not necessarily a Eurocentric one. And I think those are the two things that I probably wanted to just briefly touch on, is that one, the reality of the matter is that I think in this generation are starting to see a lot more women becoming self-empowered. And I think not by any means to speak on behalf of all women, because that would be very dangerous and irresponsible for me to do. But just as a young professional woman myself, this is something we stand, we look at, and we talk about. The fact that if we were to enter the institution of marriage, in terms of power relations and dynamics, are we still not entering what is a patriarchal space and institution, where the woman has to take on a lot more roles and responsibilities? It's debatable. Than the man does, based on how we are raised differently as boys and girls. And the reality is that girls from a young age are prepared for marriage, and boys aren't necessarily prepared for that same responsibility.
Is
Find a bit of a
is
challenge
that
with how we
is that
describe the institution.
yeah, no, I was just saying,
Yes.
I'm not sure if everyone though would agree with you about mainly females being prepared for marriage more than boys.
I would want to agree with Sam on that one. I think it's not really that we go to school for them to prepare us for marriage, but in simple conversation. For example, when you're in your house, you are cleaning or you're doing something, and maybe your parent or your aunt will say, you should do it this way because your husband wouldn't like it like that, or you should do it this way because when you go get married, you shouldn't do it like that. So it's not like they teach us to do these things like as a school, but they teach us in every single way that we live every day.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. No, this is interesting. But in that sense, like when you say the ladies or the girls are busy cleaning and doing the dishes, what are the guys being taught to do? It's another issue, because I think maybe when you talk of it in patriarchy sense, it also makes sense, because in that same time the guys are told you must go and water the garden, you must go to the field, you must do these things that you would do as a father. So they are being prepared in that sense. I don't know if what others think.
But I just want to ask that have we not shifted from this patriarchal society, especially with regard to the people that are outside the country? Because if you check at the people that are overseas, most of them, maybe, for example, there's a setting where you have 2 boys and 2 girls. Are you not going to teach that guy to do the household chores? So I think maybe where we are heading now is not as patriarchal as it used to be back then. We are moving in a society where we are even teaching our sons to do the household chores. I don't know.
Yeah, for me, I don't think it only ends at the household chores. It also goes to how you're supposed to behave. If you behave like this, your husband will respect you. If you behave like that, he won't respect you. So I don't think it's only about household chores or the things that you have to do, but it goes beyond that.
Well, it seems it seems that on the social media, most of the people are agreeing with you that actually boys are not prepared at all. Yeah, but anyway, you can continue. And Minister Vincent and Herbert, you can jump in if you want to. Yeah. Go ahead, Sam.
I just wanted to quickly come in and say, perhaps prepare. I don't mean it in the sense of acquiring certain skills, by the way, of which I've never understood why we would allow men to rely on women to feed them when that's such a critical skill, to acquire yourself. To feed and nourish yourself is such an important skill that I think the individual should acquire. But nonetheless, what I was trying to say is that we condition girls from a young age to aspire to marriage, and we don't necessarily condition boys to aspire to marriage. And so from the very beginning, there is this terrible imbalance, and it's a reality. I mean, girls grow up with this idea. I mean, Stan, you opened this conversation so well, where you said, you get born, you go to school, you may have the privilege of going to an institution of higher learning, because in the of inequality is a privilege. And then
Ah.
as a woman,
Yeah, I
You
think
get-
I think we Sam, I think we are losing you a bit there. Maybe let's just allow her connection to strengthen back.
Yes,
Yes, Mr. Vincent.
Okay, I think I agree with both lines of thought in that, in the traditional sense, there's been pressure on the ladies when it comes to marriage in the way that the parents present the issue. But the second point is also valid in that the society is changing, the dynamic is changing, and like all of us are outside our countries, okay, some of us are outside the country, and we are adopting different things from those cultures. So there has been a shift in some of these belief systems. But what I wanted to speak more on is there's more pressure these days on certain things, and that pressure is what maybe pushes the guys away from stuff like marriage. Because like last week we were talking about social media, and social media creates this mindset that you need to reach a certain level of finances so that you can get married. So if you're going on social media and it seems like every person is doing way better than you're doing, the idea of getting married, there's more pressure on you, and you feel as if you're not ready to enter the institution of marriage. So I just wanted us to look at the power of influence of social media on how guys or even ladies see marriage these days.
Wow, and that's interesting. Yeah.
I also
Go
think
ahead.
that most guys are scared of marriage because they think it takes away their freedom. So if you're now married, you are now tied down to this person. You can't do more stuff that you wanted to do. So I feel guys try not to get married also because of that. Because even most of my friends, when I ask them, like, when do you plan to get married, or do you even plan to get married at all, they don't even think about it or want to think about it because they say it takes away their freedom, and now they can't do what they want to do. So it also contributes.
Yeah, well, yes. I agree with you to a certain extent. But in me standing up for boys, yeah, well, the thing is this. There is a stage, I think, for every guy. I mean, like what we have been agreeing with Sam here, that girls are already, from a young age, they already have this mindset of getting married. You know, like what we are also taught, that a girl will grow up envisioning her wedding day. For a guy, well, no, we don't do this. But I think
Why
it
is
also
that?
comes with, I don't know. That part I do not know. But what I know for sure, there was never, I'll tell you this, there was never a day that I would sit on my own and say, hey, let me check for a suit for my wedding. Okay. It will come to a point with stages, of course. It comes with stages. There's a time that I feel like girls, they will tie me down and what. And then there's a time that you just go like, I think it's now time, you know. I would always say this, you know. I mean, it's a very, very maybe unusual example, but I'll say this. At any given time, it's called nature calls. We can be born at the same time, but we mature at different levels. But with guys as well, it's like at a certain time, there are things that excite you. Then at a certain time, there are things that are important. At a certain time, start viewing it in a different way. Then at a certain time, you're just like, yeah, well, I think it's now time. And nobody will push you or anything. You're just there and you just want to settle down. But it all stands with the stages. There was a stage that I was thinking like exactly what you're saying. Nah, girls will tear me down. But that stage passed. I'm at a stage where you're like, I think settling down is not really a bad idea at all, you know? That kind of thing. It happens naturally, I guess.
So those.
But you see, but Stan, sorry, can I just come in? That is a prime example of how the expectations or choices of men in comparison to women differ, because, you know, he at his age can take his time, and society will go, oh no, don't worry about him, he's just trying to find the right woman at the right time. But a woman of a certain age gets questioned when she's not married. Why are you not married yet? When are you going to have children? And that's exactly the gender inequalities we're trying to portray in this conversation, is that the expectations, the choices are not at an equal level, and we don't share the same lived experience as men and women when having conversations about marriage. And perhaps yes, 10 years ago it might have been different. But trust me, even in 2020, there's still pressure on young women to get married.
Yes, this is true.
That's a reality. But there isn't on men. You can take your time. At 40, 45, we're saying, I'm fair to do your thing, you know.
Yeah.
But a 45-year-old single woman is deemed less than, you know. Let's
Yeah.
be real about it.
And maybe let's you know, whilst we are there, actually maybe it's the right time also to make a turn there. Sam, maybe we can start with you in terms of also in the professional world. Does being married affect men and women in the same way? I mean, either in terms of, you know, when negotiating salaries, or when, you know, when you give your point of view, even in meetings and things like that, or in interviews, does it affect us in the same way?
Well, I wouldn't know. I'm chatang, so I wouldn't know. And I'm happily so unmarried. I think what I would say is that, you know, women, first of all, entering the workspace start on an unequal footing, because the workplace is not only institutionally racist, but it is also institutionally patriarchal. And so when you are a young, unmarried woman and you enter a meeting, unfortunately, the first thing you'll have to deal with is probably sexual advances made towards you, or comments about how great you look, instead of what it is you actually have to offer intellectually. And that's just unfortunately the experience of professional working women. Especially unmarried ones. So I actually know of some ladies in Nigeria.
But Sam, what if it's just some guy who just really liked you genuinely? I mean, they're not supposed to make this move?
Sorry, buddy, I didn't get that.
What if they're genuinely liking you? Like if a guy, not married, I'm not talking about the married ones, of course they do.
Yes.
I'm just saying like generally liking you, just say, okay, they're just making that balance, because I don't think there's a specific place that they say, we mark this place, this is for people to ask each other out. No, I mean, you can ask them anyway. Yeah. But I mean, maybe probably in your point, you're referring to probably the married men that are making advances, or they're not really in the intention to do that, or something like that.
I think I mean I hear you sound like a great guy who's just speaking with a great heart, my friend. But the reality is,
I am saying with a great heart, and
so you've got brownie points already. But I mean, the reality is that young single women are sexually harassed in the workplace, in particular single ones. But yes, even married ones, advances are made towards them, and they're often inappropriate in nature. And when I say the workplace, I'm not just meaning the professional workplace. Even in the institution of the church, we now see, Mfundisi, you can come in here, but where we see pastors making advances towards unmarried young girls, you know, who are coming of age and who are expected to get married in due course.
So on that point, you know, Paul on Facebook here makes another good point that I think, you know, where he talks about on the issue of ladies and gents having a different time frame. He talks about a biological clock as well, that there's also other natural considerations. Like, you know, ladies have got a biological clock that runs differently to men. But I want you, Elisha and Tatenda, I know you are also ministers, you know, in the church, on the point that Sam is referring to here of, you know, females being harassed, you know, everywhere, including in the church.
Okay. Well, maybe on the point of females not only being harassed but also being disregarded in the workplaces and in ministry, because if you check in the book of the letters that were written by Paul, you even see that he says that women, they should be silent in church, right? So if you're to look again in the present day society, there are only few women that are taking over in ministry.
So are you agreeing with are you agreeing that women should keep quiet, in church? Can we get?
No. I'm just trying
Okay.
to prove, to just say that, women, it doesn't start now. Even in the Bible, women have not been regarded, or they've just been regarded as second-class citizens. If you look at women like Joyce Meyer, there are very few women that are leading churches now that are ministers of the gospel. Most of them is men, right? So you just see that, women, they are not given the same, not same position per se, but they are just given second class positions.
Yeah. So maybe let's yeah, go ahead, Vincent.
Okay, I wanted to agree on the point that has been raised on segregation even in the church, because sometimes people don't regard female ministers because they think that female ministers are not supposed to also minister. But what people don't understand is the context of the scriptures, because those scriptures, we say that women should cover their heads and they shouldn't preach in church. It was to a specific group of people that had specific problems. Paul did not say that to every church. He wrote it to the Corinth church because of some issues that were happening there. So it's not a doctrinal statement to say that women were not supposed to speak at all. But there were some issues in that specific church that Paul was trying to address. That's why he never made it a universal principle that he never wants to see any woman speaking inside the church. So I think that even in ministry, women should also, because the same Paul says that there is neither male or female in Christ. So the same footing should also be given to any person that has been inspired by the Holy Spirit.
Yeah, well, guys,
Yeah,
I like this whole
yes.
thing.
In a way,
Wait, I need to point out this so that this couple can help me. There is always an issue about this whole second class thing and stuff. I like that they brought it up. Okay, in your house, do you drive this bus at equal part?
Sorry?
When you are driving your bus, which is the marriage, the house that you have, your home, who is above or is equal, or what happens there? I mean, do we have equal rights? So there is someone who says, when you're saying A, this one is saying B, and
I think on that
B or C.
On that one, Herbert, I think Paul made a comment here on Facebook. He says, "I love this couple. They are consulting who talks first, and the woman is always winning." So that question is resolved, right?
Right. I think all I wanted to say regarding marriages for now, I think we're at a transition stage where the way it used to be. No wonder why I think right now I agree with Sam that there are challenges in churches, there are challenges at workplaces, even politics. It's a serious problem where women, they're being suppressed, because you find that most positions men were in control, and only not far from now, that's when like the gates have been opened for women, they're now rising up. So in that rising, there's a lot of things which are happening to women. So I'm just agreeing with Sam that at this stage, yes, it's very true. Yeah.
So let's look at this one, financial implications, guys, because I think there are different ways that the marriage decision affects us financially. So there is the issue of if you're married, what are the implications? If you are single, what are the implications? That's why I even mentioned the issue of in the workplace, because I know when negotiating salaries, at times you get a point whereby the boss can say, "Look, you are single, you don't have kids. We believe that we're paying you enough." Like it or not, these conversations, they are raised. To say you are just a young girl, life is still ahead of you. You are single and whatever. Why do you want to put pressure, upon yourself? What can we say are the financial implications of either decision, whether to get married, to not get married, as you move on?
Well,
yeah,
I
go ahead,
know,
Herbert.
Herbert, you want to go first?
You
No.
Lucas.
You have these answers. Yeah, probably you encountered this scenario. Tell us your experience.
No, actually, I was going to divert more to like before you get married. I'm not married, and then obviously after you get married, people who get married and sometimes go or they start their marriage on debt because maybe the guy had to pay lobola and the father was asking for money that he doesn't have, and then he had to borrow from where else. So now they started their marriage on debt, and then in that sense, I would say that marriage has negative implications on your finances, and then people don't even consider the fact that you're trying to start a family, the two of you. So now they ask exorbitant amount of money when you have to pay lobola. So I think that impacts.
Lobola then comes in. Lobola just
Lobola comes in.
made its face. Yeah.
It does.
I mean, it's Dorcas and Lobola. It's like I think she's supposed to be hard. Yes. So, and as far as I'm concerned, I think if you want to get married, 2020 is the way. Yeah, because you can actually zoom and say, yeah, this is the wedding, and no social distancing and everything. Everything works for you. But the point is this. I mean, when it comes to the whole issue about, the financial implication, I think in developed nations like here or probably in South Africa as well, you need to be a little bit careful because you can get married to someone who is already in dates. And then if you have this, I don't know whether it's community of property, that when he's in date and all of a sudden you're also in date or something like that. This is a problem. You need to be open to each other. That's the first part. And then that needs to be really addressed before this happens. The case that you're talking about, Steny, about work and actually negotiation, I never experienced it. Maybe, I don't know, I was just like it. But I never really experienced it. And also, in the African culture, especially when you get married, usually it's you from the father's side, from you, the husband's side, you have to take care of the extended family, plus her and extended family. So the financial implication is going to be high,
Yeah.
And for some weird reason, when you are alone in an African culture, they don't really bother you that much with responsibilities. But when something happens in an extended family, you are now taken as a family and you have to contribute more than what you used to even probably contributed before when you're single. So this kind of financial implications from an African perspective, I think this has quite a very huge one.
Yeah, so I think also there, just to share my experience as well, I would say that on the financial implications, there are positives and negatives, but I have seen a lot of positives because you realize, I remember at some point when we were starting a business, we could easily make a decision that one of us goes and focuses full time on the business as it's raising money, and the other one remains working. And that was a benefit of being married at that point. We, at some point, when it comes to, when you're paying rent, if you're earning 10,000 rand or $1,000, wherever you are, and you start sharing.
I need to ask, do I have to ask you, what do you do? What are you doing? Can you run a business before we get married?
No.
Because you can get a wife who cannot do what
you see. That's the reason why. That's the reason why we were talking about vision here. Because remember, when you're dating, those are the things that you need to discuss. What is your vision? Where are you going? Where do you see yourself?
They have the vision, but probably they're just unprivileged. They've never been to school because of the situation. What happens? Am I supposed to say, I love this wife, but okay, come on, she's not educated. What am I supposed to do?
I think the other thing which is trying to say is that yourself, you know what you need. It's not about, I know that the whole world, there are so many ladies, but there's a specific type that you need. If it's like, for example, if you say you need a teacher, then it's you. It's your own choice. That's what you want.
She never got to that point. I think Sam said this at some point when she actually mentioned that when you are privileged to actually go to school. So now I think they actually I am going to consider, okay, let's for example, your master in civil engineering, then I find my grade 7. Hey, what am I supposed to do? Steny just told me that it was an advantage. Now the wife was also helping with the business. She cannot do that. So how? But I really like it. But she's going to be disadvantaged to this. Yes.
Sorry, can I just interrupt you a bit? That sometimes it's not really about how educated or uneducated that lady is. Because I can tell you a testimony about ourselves. Like you say that I'm a lawyer by profession, right? And then when I completed my degree, I thought here I was going to get my articles, right? But I didn't have a permanent residence, so things didn't get out the way I thought they were going to be. So we had to venture into a business, poultry farming. I had never done that. I didn't have an idea. And then I had to start researching. We had to do teamwork. I started researching. He was going to work. And now we are running a very successful poultry. I didn't have an idea about this thing, you know. So it's not about
I agree.
getting
I
a
agree with
person.
So let's I think let's move from this one because it's an interesting one. We'll continue it on social media as well. But it's really those things that affect us as we make these decisions to move forward, whether they will empower us or not. But I think part of the point that Atenta is making here is to say it's not really about the qualification, but the potential and the fact that we need to consider potential. Maybe let's hear, Sam, what kind of potential do you consider? That is, if you have considerations to get married sometime. Okay, I think. Yeah, I think her network is messing us up again. Is messing her up again. Someone maybe on social media here, Lele Zulu is asking, and one of us can just give their view. What do you think about arranged marriage? Dorcas, you are one of the of the young ones around. Arranged marriages.
Arranged marriages. I mean, it depends. For some people, it works in the long run, and for some people, it doesn't. So, based on what are you arranging your marriage? Is it a business arrangement? Then you just decide, okay, let's get married. Is it that families have said, oh, she hasn't been married, now she's 35, let's find her a man, then you get married. So I think it works and it doesn't work, but it depends on what you are basing it on. That's
okay.
mine.
Yeah, Sam, you're back. You can go ahead.
I missed your question. Connection is dealing with me, colleagues. Yeah.
Yeah,
I think it's a sabotage. Yeah.
I think there's a. I think because you shared this on Twitter and Facebook, they placed a jammer outside your place, so you are being sabotaged. Yeah. No, we were just talking about, the guys were talking about the different considerations and qualifications, business, and all that. And I was just saying, what do you consider if you do consider one day to get married, but no pressure?
No, I mean, for me, I think for me, marriage, I think, let me put it like this. I think as Africans, we have been misled as to what the ideal concept of marriage is, right? So I grew up in a background where marriage was this very Eurocentric, patriarchal form of where white Jesus says, yeah, you are coming together, and I think as I've developed my consciousness, I've understood that even if that is a belief system of some, that's okay, but context matters, and the reality of the matter is our context is Africa, right? So I think I'm still trying to navigate some of the dynamics around that, because the institution that we grew up believing is marriage versus what it actually is or what it should be. Because for me, in the African sense or through an African lens, it should be about spirituality and connection and bringing families together, not bringing two individuals together who go to pray to a white Jesus. Very controversial, I know. But that's you asked me as the individual, and that's my individual response. I'm not speaking on behalf of anyone. So I think for me, and the second thing I wanted to say, again, and this is just again to speak through a feminist lens, it is hard. It is hard for feminists, and feminists don't only have to be women, they can be men as well, to come to institution of marriage and say, okay, let's talk about the power mix within the structure of marriage, or within the structure of relationship. I don't think that's easy for many of us Africans to have. It's a very difficult conversation. I mean, I read a comment now about how the man is, in which sense are you saying that? And I'm not saying I have an issue with it. I grew up with that teaching as well, by the way, that the woman must submit to the man is the head of the home. But in the context of, for example, gender-based violence, that statement would be very problematic. So I think we need to actually unpack what does that mean when you say the man is the head of the home, because that statement in society really gives some men leeway to treat women in whichever way they deem fit. And we know that it can be abusive at times. So I think the idea or the principle is not a problem, but it's the explanation, as Baba Pastor was saying just now, you need to contextualize, so don't just quote Paul, contextualize where did Paul say that? Why did he say it? So, yeah.
So maybe in maybe 30 seconds or so, Vincent, you can try to respond to this one. What is the context of the man being, the head of the family?
I think the marriage is a partnership. So in the partnership, it just means that there is the person who has the final decision, but the decision is made through the interaction of two people. So it's not like the man is now the boss, the CEO, and is commanding people around. This is a union, it's a partnership. But in that partnership, you always have the face of who is presented to the public with what the partnership has discussed.
And I think, guys, we cannot finish this discussion without talking about abuse. So we'll go to abuse. But also, before we get there, Onai Liberty makes a good point here on social media, where he says, no one has spoken about love since we started this conversation. Has now love become a thing that we only read in the novels and maybe watch on TV, in terms of any consideration for that, how it contributes to the issue of marriage? Is love outdated in 2020?
I think from my point of view, from young people, how we view love is probably different from how elder people view it. Some of us view love as this feeling, and when this feeling has faded, we think we're not in love with the person anymore. That's probably why young people's marriages end up in divorce maybe after 2 years, after 1 year, because that feeling of being in love has faded and we don't know what else you're supposed to do. You don't know what else to feel because you don't feel like you like that person anymore. So that's what I think. And also I think that there are different benefits that people get into a marriage within their mind. Some people get into a marriage because they think, okay, this guy is super rich or this girl is super rich, so I could benefit from that. Some people get into a marriage because they think this guy or that girl is good looking. So they always have benefits that are leading them, which are not just love. So when those benefits fade, then they tend to just want to be out of the marriage.
Okay. And then, so can we say that marriage, is it a stumbling block or an enabler of development and success?
Well, I think I need to jump in there. There is a scientific research that is actually happening right now here in Europe that women from the age of 20, I think up to 29, their womb can be extracted and put in some vacuum, and then later on when they finish their PhDs, then they're given back their womb and they can start working. Well, to a certain extent, people say that it actually has a hindrance of some sort because they've got quite a lot of pressure trying to be a wife, or a husband and look after family and trying to do your studies or to develop professionally, as far as I'm concerned. Because of that, it can actually come to a point of hindrance. With respect to what Dokas actually said, I think this is a perspective that most of us young people actually have. and I also agree with Vincent when he says it's actually a partnership. It's more about the whole idea of tolerance and being in a position to accept the person with their own different view. They are not going to have the same view as yours, but you should be in a position to accept that this person is like this. This is who they are. This is what they do. Yes, we need to meet each other somewhere, somehow, but don't overly try to change the person. Because I think when you do that, overly change the person, they will start living your idea of how you want them to live. Then they don't live themselves. Then this is a problem, I think, because at the end of the day, the other person is not happy anymore. Then this causes a friction. But I think the whole idea of when you literally love someone, you love them as they are. Whoever, how they come, whatever they come, the baggage that they come with.
Yeah.
And many a times, this is the challenge. Because now I see you, a girl that I like, and then I'm trying so hard to change this person to be the one that I have in my head so that she can be like this and that. Then that doesn't work.
Yeah.
And it
And
doesn't work.
also, and Vincent said something that I just have a little question on, where he says it's a partnership where the head or the husband has the final say. So what if his final say doesn't make sense? Do I just have to go for it because he's the head of the house? How does that happen?
I think this is where you need to apply wisdom in presenting yourself, because if it's a partnership, there must be a way of convincing that person that you don't agree without being conflicting or without getting into disagreements and fighting about it. So there's some times when you can actually disagree with the person, and maybe you think that what they're saying doesn't make any sense. But you should look for ways to convince the person that, you know what, I respect you and this is your position, but I don't agree with what you're saying. There's a diplomatic way of presentation.
And in terms of the one of marriage being a stumbling block or enabler, Shingich Kutukuti here says, if you marry the wrong person or for wrong reasons, it can be a stumbling block. And then Ephraim goes on to talk about, on Facebook, that in African marriages, you marry one person, you marry the whole clan. And he goes on to talk about, we must not forget about the black tax that comes through marriage in terms of, I don't know. And I think this is a part that, as we will do our round of parting shots, maybe we can start with you, Sam, in terms of, I would really love to hear and understand from your side. I was interested when you spoke about your idea of growing up as a young person, what marriage was perceived. Because my idea of growing up, seeing marriage of, let me call it white people or white Africans, was based on what I see on TV. And what I see on TV is that white people, their marriage, they are equal. There's no lobola. You don't worry about it. You just go and you buy a ring. You put it on someone's finger. We move on. In some of even the white cultures is the bride's parents that pay for the wedding. And a lot of people, when you talk about westernizing it or, marriage being white, can you give us a bit of context, obviously from your personal experiences or your community?
Yeah, well, of course, we what is internalized is very Eurocentric in nature. So, and I think I actually wanted to touch on that a little bit, is to say, I think there is in social contemporary times this obsession with the event of getting married and not the marriage itself, which is a lifetime commitment, right? Someone spoke about partnership. Even things like Date My Family, or these shows we see on SABC One, my favorite channel. You're really looking at what has now become commercialized. Love itself is now a commodity, something we sell, right? And what is associated with that is an idea. And often the idea really doesn't speak to things, sadly, it doesn't speak to things like the lovely married couple, which I will come to for counseling when I'm in the process. They spoke about beautiful principles of things like vision. Someone who pastor spoke about the principle of reaching consensus and negotiation and talking it out. Those things are not sexy to sell, right? We can't commodify those things. They are boring. You understand? We want to sell things that are spicy and controversial, and I think that's unfortunately what is being internalized in us now. Yeah.
While you continue on that point, Sam, another interesting point that one of the person mentioned on social media was the programs like Istanbul, which actually now shows polygamy is also being commercialized. I think they're making it look sexy. Having more than one wife or more than one partner. And in our conversation a week or two ago, there was an issue about it, about polyandry and polygamy, and some people were saying, people are doing it anyway, so why not just do it officially? But yes, you can finish off.
Yeah, I mean, look, in colleagues in white custom or culture, polygamy is not even something you consider. The idea is that you have two people who come together. There's no process of labola and all of those things. The focus really is actually on the wedding itself. And I think for me, it's been quite a beautiful journey, Stan, to actually unlearn those things and understand that I'm in an African context and things are actually done a little bit more differently to how Europe sells marriage to us. But just on television, I wanted to just remind everyone, because television is partly my background, that there are three purposes of television. It's one, to inform and educate, but the third one is to entertain. So again, it goes back to this idea of how do we take a show like Istanbul and use these ideas around polygamy to make them look more appealing than what they actually are. And I think that's when you now start to use the real principles and values and ideas of marriage, particularly in an African context and with respect to African culture. So it's something we really need to look at. In conclusion, my last sentence would be to say, if education was colonized, the economy was colonized, fashion was colonized, how do you think something like marriage has not been colonized? You understand?
Wow.
So when you talk about decolonizing things, we need to decolonize this idea of marriage as well, because the way it's been taught to us from a Eurocentric perspective really contradicts what were original indigenous African teachings around the ideas. So
we can go to you, Vincent, on your parting shot, and how one can prepare for marriage. You can touch on preparing for marriage, how best one can prepare for it as you give your parting shot.
I think the best way to prepare for marriage is to discover yourself, because you want to present yourself to another person. So you need to know yourself before you know the person that can be compatible with you. So that process of knowing yourself is very important, because sometimes when you get into, let me not say marriage, but into serious relationships, you start to see sides of yourself you didn't know before. And then you think that that person is changing you, but this is who you've always been. So I think the first step, like selling stuff like being single, people think that it's a bad thing, but it's actually the best time of your life, because you can then know yourself, discover yourself, know what you like, know what you need, and know the perfect person who can work with you. So that process of discovering yourself, discovering where you're going, because the first couple spoke about vision. You cannot be sharing a vision with a person if you don't know the vision for your life. So if you've known your vision, if you know yourself and you're comfortable in your own skin, it becomes so easy for you to relate with another person who has found their calling, their purpose, and their vision. So that I think the best way to prepare in a nutshell is discover yourself, know yourself, and then by the time you meet another person, you're already active in what you have discovered. You're already working, you're already pursuing what you think is your vision and your calling.
Wow, great parting shot there. Dorcas?
How can one prepare for marriage? Okay, so it's probably
and your general wrapping up. Maybe you might not know or have a good idea of preparing, but just in general.
Yeah. So there was another one where we spoke about if marriage can help you advance in your career and just in your life in general, I think. And I think it can, and at the same time, it may not. So like what Tate and Calvin were saying, you probably have to know the kind of person that you want to be with. And you obviously have to learn the person first, because if you just go into marriage without knowing the person, without knowing where they're going, without knowing their potential, it can potentially ruin you. Because, for example, you may be someone who is maybe chasing a certain career, and the person you get married to is not even into those kind of things. And then because you want to submit to him, he's going to encourage you to stop chasing that career. And then now it's making you not to succeed in that way. So you obviously have to know your person before you get into it. And how people can prepare for marriage. I've watched a few sermons or a few things where people say you must become the person you want to be with, where if you want to be with someone who's maybe more spiritual, who's connected to God, who's going somewhere career-wise, you have to become that person first, because the person you meet has to like you as well. So that's what I would say.
Great. Herbert, your parting shot and closing remarks?
Well, I think these guys are too brilliant in their ideas. I'm just like, I always have crazy ideas, but I think, I should I'll give you kiddos. Sam, you're super awesome. Vincent, I think I should just make a call or an email and like, yeah, dude, I think I have some things hopping on, and then you can give me some advice. It's really brilliant. I like the idea. But I would think the idea is like, for me, it's more like, it's very important. I think right now marriage is actually being presented to us as a monster that is just waiting to go like, afterwards. Like, yeah, and then there comes the marriage, and then all of a sudden everything has been taken away. You're now in some prison of some sort. So I think this narrative has to actually go. And those people who are married, like you guys and Tate and Kelvin, I really need to tell you this. It's always, every time when I speak to my friends who are married, they have an issue. They always tell you about what's really going on in their marriages, and it's not nice. It's not motivating at all. And then after that, they start telling you, hey, Herbert, when are you getting married? But guy, you just told me that things are not working very well with your wife. But why do you want me to get married after telling you all these negative things? So at the end of the day, I think I think also, I don't know, it's a lot more like the way the rated twist divorces are happening and everything. It gets a little bit scary. I mean, and marriage seems to be one of the things that key critical thing that is very important one in terms of being in development and everything, because you are going to be with this person. Just imagine in this lockdown and just be with the person that you don't really actually enjoy being with. I mean, this is now leads to violence and all that stuff. But I think if you're with the person that you go along with, this can be actually a beautiful honeymoon phase, I think.
Yeah. Unfortunately, Tate and Calvin's, connection dropped before they gave us their parting shot. I think, as we close, is to say that this is a big discussion. There is a lot that can be said about marriage and how it's affecting us as the African youth. In terms of different areas of our lives that are tied to it. Someone was commenting earlier to say that in our setup, females, they're asked, from the age of 25, when are you getting married? When are you getting married? Men start being asked as well at a different age, depending on the background and family you are coming from. But this is what we will do. We are going to continue this conversation throughout the week. As you would know from our previous discussions, is that usually what we discuss over the weekend is what we will be engaging on as we go through the week. And, we will have 3 or so, premiered, conversations of people, young Africans as well, sharing their views based on what has come up. So if your point has not been discussed in the conversation as we went through this, don't feel, left out. We're still going to continue with the conversation, and we bring young people, even some of us who are on the panel, be free, and we can call you back and say, please, can you engage on this specific point? Because all we are doing at Baobab Chats, we are talking about the development of the African youth. How can the African youth be emancipated? How can each one of us share our experiences that can lead to the overall development of us as Africans? But otherwise, thank you so much, everyone, for coming through. Thank you, Herbert, Vincent, Sam, Dorcas, and Taten Kelvin. It was a great time that we shared together. And thank you for taking the time. And for everyone for commenting on Facebook and following us online. Don't forget to like our Facebook page, jump onto our YouTube page, and you can subscribe there so that you know when we are posting, and when we are sharing these developmental issues. Otherwise, thank you so much, guys. The guys on the panel don't drop off yet, so that we can wrap up. But everyone else, we can say cheers, bye-bye to you online on Facebook and YouTube.
Ciao,